Good evening and welcome to the January 7th, 2025 meeting of the Spakenkill Union Free School District Board of Education. I'd ask you to rise and join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, first item here is 2.01, comments from the public on consent agenda items only. We have comments from the public on consent agenda items. Okay, hearing none, any board discussion, consent agenda items? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda as written.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, passes 5-0. Item 4.01 is a motion to open the public hearing on repair reserve expenditures. Do I have a motion to open the public hearing on repair reserve expenditures?
So moved.
Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, passes 5-0. Do you have any community input on repair reserve expenditures? I think it's been a little bit of a while, so let me just, if you don't mind, there are 3 public sessions tonight. The first we already gone through with the consent agenda. The second is on the repair reserve. The third is on non-agenda items later in the meeting. We generally limit speakers to 3 minutes. We don't expect this to be a back and forth necessarily. We'll be taking any input. We may or may not respond. We may or may not have the administration respond, or if we don't have an answer or a response, we may be able to get that information to you at a later date. So, that being said, if you'd approach the mic and state your name and address, and you have about 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Christopher McCracken. I live at 19 Schoolhouse Lane in Poughkeepsie. Thank you to the board for the opportunity to speak tonight. My family and I have lived in the district for about 18 years now, and we currently have children attending Todd Middle School and Hagan Elementary. To us, youth sports have always been a way to bring the community together, and especially important now in a time that so many choose to be indoors over choosing to participate in outdoor activities that encourage physical fitness. In particular, school athletics have been a way to encourage community participation, which can be seen by the attendance at our district's football games. The overall quality of facilities for these sports plays an important part in encouraging player participation, spectator attendance, as well as the overall presentation of the district to those visiting. For all of these reasons, I'm here to express my support for Spakenkill's Board of Education to consider making use of the monies from the Reserve Repair Fund to invest in a new turf infield for the baseball and softball field at Todd Middle School. The baseball field has not received the typical level of maintenance attention for many years, making a project of this nature a potential major improvement for the district's facilities. Although turf fields typically have a higher initial installation cost than a grass field, they're known to offer many benefits and cost savings in the long term. The maintenance costs are far lower on an annual basis, leading to long-term savings in comparison with upkeep and maintenance of a dirt and grass infield playing surface on a similar field. Turf fields also don't require the application of chemicals or the regular water usage associated with grass fields, and eliminate the concern related to drought, very similar to what we experienced this past year. Additionally, they're far better draining, allowing games to remain on as scheduled in comparison with grass and dirt fields. Finally, turf fields have a long-lasting professional appearance, as can be seen by the recently installed field at the Hudson Valley Renegades facility, as well as our own Spakenkill football field. I asked the board to consider all the positive long-term attributes that a turf infield could offer to our district's baseball and softball teams while you work towards a decision as to what to do with the reserve funding. Again, I thank you for the time to speak.
Thank you. I'm going to ask this to the board. Would it be appropriate for, do we have a presentation that folks can understand what is being proposed? Because I think that might be helpful. And then we can resume the public comment after that. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, so we had previously identified areas that needed some repair throughout the district. Some of those areas were identified as baseball and softball fields, tennis courts, fencing at multiple buildings, exterior stairs at Todd, outdoor classroom area at Todd, as well as railings at the high school courtyard. So some of the things we were looking to do for the baseball, softball fields was to remove some overgrown vegetation, edge infield, remove some old clay, rebuild pitching mound and install packing clay, top dress, grade and seed the infield turf, build and upgrade and relocate the bullpen, and possible consideration of a turf in the batting cages. Yep.
Just to be clear on that, that's for 2 fields.
That's for the baseball and softball
This is a
fields.
singular word there, but you mean 2 fields.
Yes, sorry, baseball, softball fields, 2 fields, yes. So at the tennis courts, we would look to pressure wash and remove the dirt, level and fill all the low spots, fix upheaving around the net posts, refinish the base colors, and have some new court striping painted. There's several areas throughout the district that some fencing needs to be replaced and or repaired. So here at Todd, we would remove a fallen and damaged wooden fence and replace it with a new PVC. At Nassau, we would remove damaged posts, rails, and fencing, replace with new. We would do this similar scenario over at Hagen and add some barrier arms to help with some traffic control. Some important concrete work here at Todd. We would demolish 2 sets of concrete stairs and the railings and pour new concrete stairs and install new railings. This is really important for safety in those locations. We'd also look to install a concrete pad for a new dumpster location. Here at Todd, there is a structure that we're looking to repair to use as an outdoor classroom. We'd look to repair both structurally and aesthetically, and we would look to sandblast and paint that entire structure. Also, again, some cosmetic upgrades. So at the high school, there's a beautiful courtyard recently installed there. However, we do need some safety railings along the rock wall and stairway there so it can be utilized. So we would look to do that in the repair reserve as well. So some of the district considerations that these are significant repairs that are needed in multiple areas. We've got quotes from multiple vendors with New York State contracts for all the repairs. The overall cost was based on the lowest quotes from responsible vendors, and timing scheduling of the work would be weather dependent. So these were the initial estimated costs for those repairs being funded by the repair reserve. As you can see there, baseball and softball field was about $94,000. The tennis courts were $66,000. The fencing were $14,000. Concrete was $56,000. The outdoor classroom was $44,000, and the railings in the courtyard at the high school were $22,000, for a total of just under $300,000. So this repair reserve was established in 2022. The maximum that we could use and is permitted to be used is $750,000. It's been funded over the years from available unappropriated fund balance at the end of the year. It's used for non-reoccurring repairs to district improvements or equipment. So these are repairs that just we just kind of couldn't quite handle on the with the general fund. So we'd like to use this reserve for some of these larger costs. So in order to use the repair reserve, we need to present the proposed repairs to the board, hold a public hearing on those proposed repairs. Board of Education vote to authorize the expenditure from the repair reserve, and the work would be scheduled as weather permits starting spring 2025. So just a quick review on.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I
Yeah,
think
you're
that
welcome.
helps clear up what is before the board this evening for the public's information on what the proposal is. With that, I would ask if there's anybody else in the audience.
Should we clarify before that, no, Val, if you want to clarify that? I believe people will probably hear talk about the benefit of a turf field, which is a good idea. We don't disagree with the benefits of a turf field. However, what I think the public needs to know is that this particular fund that we are particularly looking to authorize, a turf field could not be part of that because it wouldn't be a repair, it would be a change of the field. So the question tonight is whether or not we should utilize this fund to have the dirt repairs. The question of turfing is a good question to have, but that's something that's not voted on tonight on this particular repair reserve fund. So I just want everyone to be clear that really what tonight's hearing is about is whether or not to authorize the fixing up of both the softball and baseball field, so two fields. Turf could not be considered in this particular thing. So if the board or the public would like to explore the avenue of turf for the future, that is something we can do, but that is something that's separate from what is being asked tonight. So I still think it's important to hear the public in their values of turf versus non-turf, but that is not something that would be resolved tonight. Tonight we're just trying to figure out whether or not we should fix up the fields for this year, for the next couple of years. The idea of turf is probably something that would take a little bit more time, probably a few years, that would have to figure out how to utilize the best way to do that. So just for clarity's sake, I wanted to put that out there and see if there's any questions from the board on that, or if Val can say it more eloquently than me before we proceed.
And part of the differentiation between what can be used for the repair reserve is SED's definition of what is a repair. And a repair, according to SED, is to return something to its original usable form. Whereas what we propose is to put topsoil and keep the dirt field and make it more usable immediately, where a turf field is considered an improvement, and under SED law, that's a capital improvement which can't be used by this particular fund. If we were to do a turf field at some point, it would be a capital improvement, it would be a slightly different process. We would make our same presentations to the board, but in order to expend those funds, it would have to be put to a full public vote. So that would be something that would be a separate proposition, probably during a May vote, or if we really wanted to, we'd have a separate community vote for that. So that's the major difference between using a repair reserve strictly for putting something back in its usable form and making an upgrade using the capital reserve.
So I have a couple questions on that. The SED, what we received was the repair funds is used to pay for the cost repairs to capital improvement or equipment, which repairs are a type of not recurring annually or at a short interval. So this would be a capital improvement and a repair to a field that has not had any significant improvements in 25 years.
The way that that's read, it's a repair to a capital improvement. So, for example, it would be a repair to the turf field, which was a capital improvement for the district. So it's not implementing the capital improvement.
I guess my
it's
next
repairing.
question would be, why were we allowed to consider it at the last meeting and were offered a estimate on what it would be, on whether or not we want to consider it at the last meeting, and now we're being told that we should not even have been allowed to do that?
The reason that that turf even came up was because the board asked for the cost of a turf field. And that's what we did. We presented what a turf field would cost.
And then we were given the option on whether or not we wanted to move forward with turf or if we wanted to stay with
And
turf.
if the board did decide to move forward with turf, at that point, the explanation would have been made that that portion of that project would have to be funded through a capital reserve, not the repair reserve. So that would have required a public vote.
So this is an existing field, it's a
Yes.
existing facility that needs improvement. And we are not able to use our repair funds for improvement,
Correct.
even though it says that we are to use them for capital improvements.
It's referring to capital improvement as a noun, not improvements to capital. That's the way that's read.
Is that, where is that coming from? Is that an interpretation of the administration, or is that something that we're getting directly from the SED?
That is how it's written with SED. It's repairs to capital improvements.
Right. And this is an improvement to the to one of our capital facilities. It's part of the capital.
We checked into it. We can't use this fund for that. No other way to say it than that. There's other vehicles that we could explore to use. And we're sorry the board misunderstood that. I do think we tried to say at last board meeting that we can't use this fund for that. We did review it and balance it. But it's okay. I mean, there's a lot going on. But that's just the reality we're dealing with. That doesn't mean we can't pursue turf. But that means there's just other avenues we have to do that. Which will probably be a longer process, but I mean, if this is the highest priority and this is what the board is directing us to do, we would have to look into how to turf the fields a different way. When you look at the estimated cost of turfing, it would be very difficult to utilize the budget or even some of our funds because it would exhaust them. But again, if that is what the board is looking to do, is to exhaust the funds for turf fields, that's something we can look into. We're not against that. I mean, I think the benefits, there's a lot of benefits to turf fields. I have some experience with it. And I think it's definitely something we should do a full report on. I think Mr. Lanzoni should be involved. This is really a question of whether we should do some repairs to the field. When Anthony came aboard and was hired, we had asked him, what can we do to the fields? We want them to get them in better shape. And he had a plan. Do you want to talk a little bit about the dirt plan with this clay from the minor leagues and all that stuff that you had? That might also help people understand what we're not just getting a dump truck of dirt and then drive it away.
Sure. I mean, this would involve, of course, a contractor that does this. This is their specialty or one of their specialties, Landtech, and there are others as well. But it's their specialty to come in and grade and reseed infields. And we spoke about a proprietary blend for clay that is used in a lot of minor league, major league fields that we have access to, that we will use to put down. That in itself will help with the drainage alone. Everything will be re-edged, remeasured, recalibrated. So it's more than just using what equipment we have available to kind of help get the fields ready for the season, rather a larger repair to the fields that can then be maintained moving forward, so that it stays in this kind of more pristine field. Yeah.
Who, did you speak, you said you spoke with somebody at SED and said that this is not
I have
something
not.
that we can do?
No, there's definitions on the SED website of what a repair reserve can be used for, and that's where.
I would just like to see those, if possible, please. 'cause,
Sure.
You know, we've
Just gonna say,
asked
I think we
for,
quoted it in a response, so you might
Right.
have seen the wording.
but the response doesn't give a definition of it. It just says that it needs to be a capital improvement, a repair to a capital improvement. So that's, sounds like it's being interpreted. You said you spoke with somebody at SED and you're being told you can't do it. Is it that we talked with somebody?
I want to make sure, I hope I didn't say I spoke with someone at SED, because I have not, and if I made that, we spoke, if I did say that, I apologize. We did not speak with someone from SED. We are just looking at it from,
So it's-
what?
Yeah. Yes. Thank you.
There's a definition of reserve, of what a repair is and what an improvement is.
And our interpretation is based on that, because there's other types of capital reserves. There's ones that are entitled to repair fund, there's some that are entitled, so there's other funds that you can use for this. This particular one, you believe, is for repairs. There's other ones that aren't for repairs, and like I said, we can explore using those for turf. That just wasn't what we were presenting tonight or the other.
You had mentioned capital reserve when you were speaking before.
Yes.
That's a fund that's potentially available.
That is, the process is just a little more involved, because that requires a full community vote.
Similar in that respect to the more recently concluded capital campaign.
Correct.
What is our capital reserve right now? Do we know?
But we have a couple of them, which we set up to cover the cost of the EV buses and the infrastructure that's required of them. I think between the two of them, there's probably about $5 million in extra
Between the two.
between the two. Because both of
The
them.
EV was set to 2
They
million?
were both maxed out
was
at
it?
10.
Both maxed out at 10,
10.
okay.
Which we also didn't believe would be enough to cover the electric bus initiative, but we were trying to be prudent and have monies available. So if we have to go out to the public, it would be less money we would be asking for.
So repair is used in educational, section 408 refers specifically to the requirement that plans and specifications for major repairs which affect the health and safety of occupants must be approved by the commission.
And those, right, those are repairs usually to buildings, and since this is outside of that, it's the second part of that
Okay.
definition.
Other repairs are occasional work of recurring nature which are intended to restore to satisfactory condition that which has decayed, deteriorated, weathered, or become broken, torn, or otherwise inoperable. Maintenance is recurring work which is intended to promote the upkeep of property and properly operating condition. Repairs and maintenance are not eligible for building.
I mean, I think it's clear, we'll directly ask a direct question to SED, so that we then could say that's what it is.
So we started a repair reserve fund in 2022 and 2023, a capital reserve fund in 2023, 2024, and an electric bus reserve fund in 2024, 2025. So we have extra money every year that we're putting into these, and just those three alone that we've approved in the last 3 years has almost $6 million into it. And we're saying that we're not having the funds right now to be able to do a $500,000 re-turfing to the field.
The reason we were able to have that much to put into reserves, because during those years, we also had federal COVID money, which alleviated a lot of the expenditures that were usually funded through the general fund. So there were unusually larger fund balances at the end of the year, which was why those reserves were created to say, okay, we can put this money away for future expenses.
And this seems like a future expense that would be one that we could afford to do without having to increase the taxpayers. It's money that has come from extra taxes each year to be able to do this as a smaller project versus adding it to a large capital project. And yeah, I would like to hear the exact, whether or not from SED, if we're allowed to use these repair funds to.
Only this one's a repair fund. The
The
other
other
ones
ones-
are
I
not.
understand that. No,
So
I
the other
understand.
ones, we believe, could be used for the turf field. That just wasn't what we were considering tonight. That is something that's a future project that we'd have to look to see. I would recommend the district do a needs assessment, because there is many needs in the district, including the electric bus, that we would probably have to go to the public for monies to expend in order to meet that demand. And there's also a lot of HVAC, there's internal, there's a high school auditorium, there's a lot of things that are on the list. It would make sense to do a needs assessment and then ask the board to help us prioritize, and then look at the money and see how we should allocate those capital reserves, is that the correct term, for that. And turfing could be a great idea for that. That's just not what we were asking for tonight.
So I'll read what I had read a little earlier with it, but I do agree that there are other high priority capital projects that we need to look at tackling in the near future, but most of those are outside of what the district could afford individually or without a bond, or would take possibly years to come to fruition. This one sounds to be something we can afford to do on our own without the increase of taxes individually, and was identified as an area of needed repair and improvement. This is something that was just put up there as a significant need of repair and improvement. This is a repair and improvement to a current facility that we have.
Yes.
So I believe that the repair funds can be used towards doing that. And I would just like
So-
clarification from SED if we're allowed to.
Specifically this fund, because this is the only fund we're talking about. The
Correct.
other funds we
Yep.
believe can be used, but you
Yes,
believe this fund.
specifically this one. I would like clarification from SED specifically on if we can use
We can.
repair reserve funds from our for a turf fields
That is no problem.
as a repair improvement.
We believe that, we don't know the answer, but let's get clarity so we all know, and I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, clarification question. So you mentioned that an improvement such as a turf field, which again I think would only be equitably, feasible if it were both fields, the baseball and the softball field, would be considered capital improvement, and it could be, I guess, either alone or conjoined with other capital improvements as part of a project that would have to be approved by public.
I mean, a capital project historically for this district has been millions and millions of
Right.
dollars. We conceivably, there could be if the board wants to go that way,
Right.
have a smaller capital project that could be almost entirely funded through a reserve if.
Right, like a standalone.
Yes.
So, yeah, my question then, I guess, relates to that. I seem to recall that during the recently concluded capital project, when the turf field was part of the project, only one part of a much larger project, that that project was, as a whole, aidable from the state.
Yes.
Right, and if the turf field, say the football field, the turf field at the football field was pursued or approved as a separate capital project, would that have been fundable? I seem to recall the requirement that such an improvement needed to be
Associated
connected
with the
to an
building.
internal school
Correct.
improvement or
Correct.
to an existing physical
In order
plant.
to be able from SED, it has to be connected to something in a building.
Right. Yeah,
You have
so,
to do inside
Right.
projects in order to do an outside project.
right. Well, I think that was a persuasive issue or persuasive point in joining the turf field to that project. So I would be concerned, I mean, maybe it's, I absolutely understand, Paul, this is a separate issue. But if we were to talk about that, I think that would be a major issue to confront, is whether a standalone turf improvement project would be fundable or aidable, rather, aidable. If not, I think that's a significant issue. Whether it is or not, it
Well, it
would be a
wouldn't be in
significant
a
question.
capital project, however, in a capital reserve, that's probably different.
Right, but we would probably need SED approval for it, and at that point, it would not be aidable. We would not get building
I see.
aid on those expenses.
Yeah. If we used our capital reserve fund for that.
And if we did just.
If we were
the field-
approved to use our
Right, and if
capital
we
reserve fund.
did just the field without any interior work to make that qualify for, to be aidable.
Right. I guess another point is you spoke, or Anthony represented the other parts of the project that are up on the screen, I guess. I mean, I'm concerned that we not get sidetracked a little bit from the other parts of this project. You know, this improvements, proposed improvements to softball and baseball fields, that's part of it. But there are things, the rest of parts of the project seem to be areas of significant need, and I hate to see those issues possibly sacrificed, at the expense of the baseball and softball field. And again, appreciating and understanding that these are separate issues. I think that understanding isn't entirely clear still. I think it was clear at the previous meeting on December 10th. It certainly was clear to me that these were separate issues, and I understood the presentation on the turf field, or the presenting of the estimate on the turf field, to be just information for the board. But it was my understanding coming out of that meeting that we couldn't pursue that as part of the reserve fund. So, you characterize that as a misunderstanding of the board. It was not for me, I have to say.
Now, what percentage, when we talk about aidable, building aid, what are we talking about? 5%, 20%, 50%? What does the state give?
Well,
Do we
the
owe
state-
them back on it? Is it just money that they're giving as part of it?
It's money we're expending, either we bond it and spend it so that the building aid helps us pay back the bond, or we fund it ourselves. But what building aid is done is based on the expenses. It's calculated every year based on the whole financial state of the district, but it usually hovers around, for the district, for our district, it's been somewhere between 65 and 70%.
So if we have inside component, then the state would contribute 65 to 70% or so of the entire cost of the project.
Right. But that's spaced out over the course of 20 years.
Right. Over 20 years. Okay, that's good. Good to know.
And we have internal work we could do, like,
Right.
there's a way to do this. This is just not what we're asking today. And I do think it'll take time. I think turf field doesn't, even if you said today we could do it, it'll take a while. Like I said, I recommend doing this and also pursuing the possibility of turfing our fields. We might find that, I don't know, Anthony's magical minor league clay is something that we like. We might find it doesn't, but I think it would repair the fields, both of them, and then allow us the time to pursue a turf field where we know SET would approve it and it would be fundable. And I think if that's something the board wishes for us to do, I don't think that's a problem for us to do. It's just gonna take time, and it's not what tonight is for. So again, I believe it would be a good idea to do this, because otherwise I don't even know if the baseball field will be able to be, the softball field will be able to be improved on this year. But the real question is, if the board believes we're gonna be able to get turf field, whatever, a season later, which I'm not sure of, Anthony, you think that would be too soon, too? I just saw your,
Yeah, likely. Yeah.
so if we're talking at least 2 seasons, 3 seasons out, really what we're asking people to consider is, does it make sense to do this, improve the fields, and then pursue a turf field, ask the voters and all that stuff, and then, so have the fields in better shape, and then if it's decided, yes, we want to put this to a vote, put it to a vote, and then you get a turf field. In the meantime, if we don't do this, then the fields will be the same for a couple more seasons at least, until that could be done. Now, if there's some way through Val's magic and other things we need that we could do a turf field through our capital, not reserve, not repair, that is something we also could look at, but that still wouldn't be for this season. So that's really what we're talking about. It's not no turf, it's, hey, if the board wants to pursue turf, let us pursue it, and let us try to get it. But in the meantime, let us make the fields in best shape we can, see if Anthony can work his magic that he's, and
A lot of pressure on that.
I know.
get
I want
Marco
that.
involved, get that, and see what we can do with those capital funds or a capital project, similar to how we got the other turf field.
So timeline-wise, if we decided to do a turf field later on, and doing this now, we're looking at a couple of years down the line. Because last week, or last meeting when I asked, I was told that the board would decide. Kind of a non-answer to be like, we decide, because we're not deciding, it's a couple of years down the line. If we put the money into this, then we're obviously not doing a turf field next year. Right, so you're talking about a couple of years down the line if we were to do this ahead of time, or now.
Again, this is what Anthony has just said, it doesn't look like it could be, like we saw how long it took to do the other turf field, it doesn't look like we have it for next season is what he said. If we do a full search and get Marco involved and get companies here and say that we could give you actual accurate, it's just our belief through our experience that it's at least 2 seasons out. I would say 3, but we also try to work magic here, right? If this is a priority, we want to do it, we will then look at the capital reserve. We do have to do the needs assessment, if we spend this, does that make sense? Because we have this mandate of electric buses, or we have this, we got to look at all that. But if turf fields is the priority, we will try to figure a way how to do it. But based on what people here just said, it's at least 2 seasons away before something would be installed.
So, to Joanne's point, she did ask that at the last meeting, because I did review this at the, prior to coming to the meeting tonight. I watched our last meeting, and that was asked, when would this project be able to be started, and how long would it take? And the answer at that time was potentially in the spring, and approximately 2 months. And that was specifically regarding the turf field discussion.
Really?
I don't know if anyone,
Now,
I don't think anyone said
It's not
that,
right.
but if it
Now,
was.
maybe
not
it's
right.
a misunderstanding on that, but that's what was, it was gonna be around 2 months to do a turf field installation. I don't think it was gonna be done this season either. I don't think that was the thought of doing it, was because there's no way we'd be able to do it in the middle of the spring. And that was exactly how I felt about it when you said it, was that it wouldn't be for this season. But that it would be done in the springtime of, once baseball is over with, and possibly be ready for the following season. And that the time frame of putting in the turf field would be approximately 2 months from your prior experience of having them installed.
Yes, I've seen turf fields installed over summers, so yes.
Anthony, does that include all the?
All the leading up to?
Yeah.
You
You mean once everything is set?
That's
and
correct.
you-
Once SCD has
Yeah.
approved it, which can be a 6 to 8 months approval process and review, even at that, there's some serious lead time there. If it was done as a capital project or from the capital reserve, this is the process that it would take, and unfortunately, that does take some time. So you may be looking at some 2 years until a field could be installed.
Isn't there an environmental review that's part of that usually? Well, I
There's
remember
a lot
that from
go
last.
into it because you're dealing with drainage. I mean,
Right.
Dan might know that even more, so it's.
I recall, it's just what I recall.
I just sense a lot of doubt, so if there's doubt, we could pull this, not put any dirt down, and pursue turf as an avenue and do it the right way, where we have the experts come in and Mark will come in and do all that. I just think I think it's just gonna take a couple years. I could be wrong, but I know SED, I know how things take forever. We just finished a capital project that started before I started here and just finished, whenever that was, last year, this summer. So that's all okay, it's all okay. I sense doubt, and I don't want you to vote on something with there's doubt.
I was under at least I felt that by using the repair reserve fund versus a capital reserve fund or doing a capital bond project, that it was an easier avenue of pursuing this than the years of going through a bond process and the years of going through a capital reserve project to get this approved.
So
and
it
get
would be easier to use, quicker to use a reserve fund, but you still need SED approval, and you need people coming in to give you the quotes and choose the right person, and all that's a process. If there was a capital project, it would take even longer, because you gotta marry it with indoor stuff. You really do it appropriately, you wanna do a needs assessment so that you can look at everything you need and make that determination. So the concept of the capital reserve exists, and that's something we can't pursue, but I still think that is 2 seasons away. Would that be accurate in our thought? That we could be wrong, and if there's doubt, let's not do this. We won't do any repairs to the field this year, and we'll pursue turf and see, and maybe through everything we can get it in a season, which I'm not sure of. Or do this, get the fields up to snuff. It's really the board is looking at, is spending this money worth it if we happen to get turf fields in a season or 2 or 3?
So just for clarification, when you say not do this, do you mean extract the baseball, softball field repairs from this project and go ahead with the rest of it? Because again, I'm concerned,
Correct.
2/3 of the cost here is for other things.
I think we would extract it. We couldn't vote on it tonight. We'd have to put out another hearing and do all that, which is fine. But if there's doubt, I don't want doubt. I don't want the board.
Because otherwise, it seems like it's a false dichotomy. It's apples and oranges. These two projects are mutually exclusive.
And
from everything I've
that
heard.
94 is cut that in half, or however you want to cut it, because that's for both fields.
Right.
So it's really, where we're at is 40 and 50, 40,000 for one, 50,000 for the other.
So I had asked at the last meeting, even before this one, when it was first proposed in this manner of doing dirt, and I asked for estimates to be provided and the information to be provided on the turf option. That's what I was expecting, was that estimates were going to be gotten of what it was going to cost and a timeline of when this was going to be, and we provided that information. We were given a number of 525 without ever seeing any of the estimates, even after asking for copies of the estimates, and being told, very generically that it's not supported at this time, and that was the reason of not wanting to move forward with it. Just, financially, it was not being advised by the admin to move forward with it. So, again, I asked for the information to be more informed about this, of the quote, to see what the estimates are for, and a timeline from those companies of when they would expect to be able to do this, and the timeline from, the expectations here of what this would take to do. In addition of asking for a quote of what the current renovations that are being proposed of the dirt, cost analysis of it, of just asking for you know, the past couple of years. I know it's a long time to go back that far, but, you know, just seeing how much we have spent in it, and, you know, an estimate of what the annual expenses were going to be, and did not receive that information. And I agree with you, that I was not, you know, misinformed in the last meeting. I just felt I wasn't fully informed and requested the additional information so we could be fully informed before making a decision on this. And we still have not received the information that was requested for. I have a concern of deciding to do a more or less a Band-Aid at this point, hoping to make this last a couple of years, to wait till we get turf on it, and then wasting the money that we're doing now just to dig it up 2 years from now or a year from now, which is why, again, I asked for quotes. And
Quotes were given, you received the quote, but I guess timelines were not given. Is that accurate?
I did not receive a copy of the quote. I was told what it was, but I never received a copy of the quote.
Gotcha, so by quote is you wanted to see it, not know what.
Specifically, I asked a copy of each quote the district received from each company for the turf infield.
Okay. Anything you have?
I do.
Okay.
The
Does that
lowest one
include
was the
softball?
one we
Sorry?
showed, the
No.
other quote was higher.
Does that include softball
That
as
was
well?
just for the baseball field.
Yeah, that was
Only-
just for the
only
baseball
baseball is
field.
given?
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's get clarity questions we want Anthony to find. We want you to get quotes on a baseball field and a softball field.
Mhm.
We want you to get a timeline of how long a company thinks it would take, including SED approval, and to do that. We would then have to interpret if we could use the capital reserve for it. And then we would have to put a timeline in as if there was a vote, which probably normally coincides with a budget vote, where the public would vote whether they want to use the funds for that purpose. So that has to all be included into the timeline. And I believe also was asked, and I believe we answered it, but we didn't give a number, was how much has it cost previously to manage the fields? And you felt you really didn't have a number on that because in your estimation, more should have been done over the years, so whatever number you would come up with would not be accurate. But I think we're still being asked for a number, so come up with a number that you feel is accurate, and then also come up with a number of what it would cost to continue on with dirt management, or whatever you want to call it.
Properly managed.
Properly.
Going forward.
One thing I would say, I don't think the intention of this particular thing was a Band-Aid for the field. I believe that this, we believe, would make the fields very appropriate for it. It wasn't to do this for something else. It was actually to get the fields up to what we believe and Anthony believes would be an appropriate level. But obviously, a brand-new turf field will pop and will be sharp. But this was not, when this was put up here, was not put up here to be an intermediary. We thought it might actually be something the district would be proud of, to kind of have the minor league clay and the look of that. So I just want to clarify that this was not an intermediary. However, we're kind of characterizing that way now because if the board is asking us to pursue turf and we were to pass this, then it would be an intermediary. Except there's a lot of steps that would have to happen, and we could not do this, put it up for the voters, and the voters could say no, and then we wouldn't have either. So it's just kind of like a decision you have to make. And it's okay. This is a good discussion, and I think the concept of turf is good. This is just our current reality of what we can do, and we want to be as clear or clarify as best we can. So if there's more questions, please ask them so that we can have something prepared where everyone feels their questions are answered.
Anthony, you say you have the two quotes.
I do.
Where are they?
I'm sorry?
How much were they?
For the baseball field, not the two, for the baseball field alone. Like this is broken out.
I don't know if you have, or remember, you put the lowest one on there, so one was for
Yeah,
525,
but-
and then one was for more than that, but I don't know.
Yep, they're also broken out with not a total on it, so
Okay.
I'm trying to do quick math and,
All right.
and what areas we actually,
If we could just get those
yeah.
forwarded to us.
Yeah.
I would still like to hear further from the public on this third-year report. So I'd like to allow them to continue to
You
speak.
did, I definitely plan on doing
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I did have a quick question though on another side. You had mentioned that you're back in auditorium right now. Do we have a concept of scale of those right now? Time frame on those, the work that needs to be done?
No,
Because-
we have not put any of that together. This was all, that's why I suggested doing the full needs assessment. These were just things that were on our radar to do. We haven't even put the board on that radar because we, the question of turf kind of came up recently, and that changed the dynamics of what we were planning on. We were not planning on going to the public for a capital project just yet, because we thought we just had one, we wanted to finish, and we wanted to get a little more information on the electric buses, because we do believe that might be a capital project we have to do. So we were not going to look for a capital project at that point. Now, that has changed, because of the conversation we have here, but that will take time to process, to go through, and to have all that. So we'd be willing to do that, if that's what the board would like us to do.
I'm asking that just because I wanted to see if there's a way to bump anything. If there was something that was ready to bump in for internal that we could capture some of the building aid, that would be important, I think.
100%, we wanted to do some inside work in order to do the outside.
Anybody else from the board have anything to add at this moment? Okay, why don't we open it back up to the public for any comment from the public at this point? Appreciate your patience, thank you.
Thank
Name
you
and
for,
address, please.
My name is Ray Cody. I'm a resident of 25 Oriole Drive. I've resided there for the last 24 years. My wife was born and raised in this school district and went through his entire school district. I will say how long that is, because I'll be in a lot of trouble if I can't tell how old she is. And my son is currently a student here in Todd in the 8th grade. I was going to speak on the support of the turf fields, but what Mr. McCracken said was spot on, and I agree with everything he has, and I still do support the turf field. But as the other discussion went on through here, and I don't want to drag this out, I became a little confused, because it seems we're talking about this one fund. If we use that money, things can happen a lot faster. Well, if we have to go another route, it's going to take more time. And I hear the discussion between repair versus replacement, that we can't use these funds because it could be replacing the turf with replacing the other field. But yet I look at a lot of these other expenditures. We're replacing concrete steps. We're taking them out, putting in new ones. That's replacement. We're tearing down fencing. We're replacing it with new. All that is replacement. So I think we're getting caught up with semantics, repair versus replacement. What really matters is doing the best for our kids and the students. They're our investment. I mean, there's a reason why. Yeah.
Thank you.
There's a reason why this school district in this area is so hot for housing market. Everyone wants to live here. One of the number one reasons is the school district. Let's spend the extra money. Let's invest in our kids and our future. And that's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Rich Trent, 4 Timberline Drive. At a board meeting maybe 7 or 8 years ago, former Superintendent Mark Vellante spoke about the need for establishing what he called a culture of maintenance. We've seen twice in the century we've had to embark upon very costly capital projects, in part because we allowed the facilities to deteriorate to the point where it was almost embarrassing to walk through the buildings or on the grounds. And I think establishing the Repair Reserve Fund was a good positive step toward establishing a culture of maintenance. And I think what we're seeing tonight, a list of repairs, it's very important that we try to address these things as they become, as the need becomes apparent, rather than waiting for the once-in-a-decade capital project. So I do support, in general, the proposal tonight. I'd like to add one item for consideration. So during the last discussion at the last board meeting, a couple board members mentioned that the baseball field is in poor condition, in part because it's shaded during the day. In the morning, it doesn't even have the ability to dry off by the time that the team practices in the afternoon. The last time I saw the baseball field up close was when I was a student here, and that was a very long time ago. The trees were much shorter back then. So on Saturday morning, I stopped by the school as I did my errands, and I observed that there are a lot of tall trees just to the south of the field, and they were shading it at that time, and I figured just given the layout of the field and the trees, they'd probably be shading it even in the middle of the summer, at least during the morning. So I'd like to propose that you consider removing the trees that are on district property. Many of those trees they do appear to be on district property. I pulled the property map from the county website, and looking at the property lines, many of the trees that are shading the field are on school grounds. The others are growing at the back end of the lots of the adjoining residences. You might be able to convince the people who live there to allow the district to remove those trees at district expense. So I would just like to propose that as something for additional consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for your time. My name is Brad Cookingham. My boys reside at 16 Darlene Drive. My oldest, Braden, is a junior at Spackenkill High School, and my youngest is a freshman at Spackenkill High School. Both of my boys play baseball and enjoy doing so. When I brought this up the other night, my youngest, Tyler, was thrilled that there was going to be a discussion on the baseball field because it's in such poor condition. This year I saw a kid at third base catch a ball that should have been easier to be played, but it wasn't, and it caught him, and I believe it broke his nose. A couple things that I would like to bring up is that my ex-wife and I moved to this district because of the district that it is. My boys have come up through Nassau, Hagen, Orville Todd, and now they're at the high school. I work in the town of Poughkeepsie. I am a police officer in the town of Poughkeepsie, and what I see in my experience of 24 years in law enforcement is that kids that are in sports don't interact with law enforcement. So it is truly an investment for our district, for our community. Another thing that I would like to add to that is that, lost my train of thought. So bear with me for a second. I should have wrote it all down. I would like you just to invest in our kids. I'd like you to invest in our community, and I think the turf field is the way to do that. I also have been part of, this is what I was getting at, part of an organization that, such as yourself, with an executive board, and I know things can be delayed. So the last thing I want to see is this to be delayed a couple of years and to have no capital or improvements on the field. So whatever kind of semantics we need to figure out on the wording of how this gets done, I don't want it to be tabled continue to be tabled and that not have any kind of improvement to the field, because my boys have a couple of years left here to play some baseball, and I want them to do it on the good baseball field. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Richard Decker, and I live at 9 Stewart Drive in Poughkeepsie. I'd like to first and foremost thank the board and the administration for everything you do. I know you take a lot of time and energy to make sure that this district and our kids are taken care of. I'm a proud parent of 3 kids that have either gone through the SPAC and Kill system or are in the SPAC and Kill system. My oldest is 27. My middle one is 20 at Quinnipiac, and my youngest is a freshman in high school. You know, I gotta tell you, and Dr. Fanuel knows me quite well. We went to high school together, and I just, you know, I call it as I see it. There was a lot of tension at this board, I felt. You know, and I felt there was a lot of division or hidden agenda. I don't know what it was. I couldn't put my finger on it. But when you go back and look and evaluate, I think you'd be very surprised at my comment. And as far as I'm concerned, there's been a lot of talk, but nothing about risk. Risk and reward, right? And there's a relationship. I don't care what business we're talking about, there's a relationship. And the fields that we have here are despicable. We have a team, a tradition here at SPAC and Kill High School, where we have won 3 state championships in the last 20 years. Ketchum has a very rich tradition in baseball. Arlington has a very rich tradition in baseball. Ketchum has 2. Arlington has 1. And I was a proud member of it in history. And so for our facilities to look like that, and we have the best record in Dutchess County, you should really look in the mirror. And you should take a look, go out on that field, and see if you would like your kids playing on that field and taking a ball to the eye, or twisting and tearing an ankle, or an ACL. And then evaluate based on your needs. Because a stairwell from outside is needed? I'm shocked, to be honest with you. And that football field turned over in the summer, if I'm not mistaken. We did not miss a season. So, whatever it takes for everybody to get along and figure this out for the kids, I would greatly appreciate it.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Hello, how are you guys doing? My name is Nick Caparco. I live at 37 Beechwood Park. I have 3 children in the district. They go to Nassau and Hagen. These guys do a fantastic job. I'm also a police officer in the community. I have over 20 years. And I'm on the current board for the Little League here. And one of my duties there is I'm in charge of field maintenance. We've done 2 fields over the summer because our town has a completely abandoned our program. And we pay out of our own pockets, and dads do a lot of their own maintenance on the field. Just some questions I have, if you guys did end up going with the dirt, which I'm not in favor for, do the fields have irrigation?
Why don't you go ahead and finish your points, and then I'll jot down any of your questions, and then we'll address them afterwards.
Okay.
That's okay?
Just in my my last 5 years being on the town, involved in the town Little League with field maintenance, we've been doing dirt fields, and over the last 15 years, we've had to redo Red Oaks Mill Field 4 times because it's very hard upkeep. You need a village to take care of the field properly, to have proper drainage, to make sure it's safe. This year we hosted the All-Star State Tournament, and we got over 100 complaints from families coming in and out of town because kids were getting hurt on the field. So if these fields are in rough shape, I understand where the complaint's from, and talk about putting a Band-Aid over the field. It is a Band-Aid because if you don't have a proper facility manager spending 8 hours a day on a baseball field, it's not going to be meticulously maintained. Just something to think about. I'm a Ketchum graduate. I played baseball at Ketchum. My wife went there. She's a teacher there. We moved to this district because of the school district. That's why we lived here. We've lived here now for 10 years. And I agree with these guys. Let's spend some money on our kids. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Anthony, there is, if I'm not mistaken, there's one water area near the mound. Is that correct for irrigation?
I believe so, and then they are able to bring out large-scale watering devices to help with that. But
Is it
yeah.
basically a spigot and then we tie a hose to it and you use it to?
It's a larger water source, so it's not just like a garden hose,
Right.
but essentially, it's
Can I just say, without proper irrigation, it's going to be very hard to maintain the grass on the field.
I'm sorry, if you
sorry.
don't mind, just so it's
Yeah.
on the record and everybody can hear you
Yeah.
through the microphone. Thank you, appreciate it.
Just with the irrigation that I've dealt with our fields here in the town, without proper irrigation, which we have here in the town, it's very hard to keep the fields looking plush, especially with a drought that we had this year. The fields dry up very fast. The infields become concrete. They literally will become concrete. Kids slide on the field, their pants get ripped. It's like sliding on concrete. So without proper irrigation, when you're redoing a baseball field, it's really going to be hard for that field to be pristine. And we also spent the money with the town, Cal Ripken League. We spent the money and we got minor league dirt, clay. So we spent the money, we got it shipped in from Connecticut, came highly recommended from a landscaper who redoes fields. And they also, Renegades, at the time when they were dirt, they were using this company also. So, that's something too that you gotta think about. If you do redo the fields, it will look nice, but without proper irrigation, it's gonna be very, very hard to maintain. That's all.
Anyone else? I think it's still appropriate to continue board discussion. Would you like? Yes.
So to echo what a lot of them are saying is something I wrote down earlier is the students who play on these fields do deserve better. Expenses aside, the benefit of providing a turf field to our district's baseball and softball teams are needed. The same benefits a lot of our other sports are getting from practicing playing on the turf, football, and soccer fields. The feeling that both softball field or baseball and softball field needs to be done at the same time, in my opinion, is debatable. Both the softball team and the baseball team can play on a turf to baseball field. We have seen that at plenty of tournaments that it's possible to do that. Doing these fields separately also allows the initial cost and future maintenance costs to be spread out a year or two, so we don't have to repair both fields in the same year each time. With the spring weather in our area, leads to multiple practices and games being canceled due to the field conditions. The baseball infield in particular has apparent drainage issues and is in the shade most of the day, making practices and games consistently canceled. Even on a sunny day, if it's been raining the day before, we found that it's still not a usable field the following day, sitting in the sun, or the lack thereof. It's a very short season for these teams to practice or to play, and even harder with the rainy conditions causing field issues to cancel. Turf would allow them to play rain or shine. We've seen full tournaments held in the rain on turf fields, but I'm sure both the softball and the baseball would like a field to practice on during the rainy season, and turf can provide that. I am still in support of trying to see if we are allowed to use the repair reserve funds to make this happen. And if not, if we're being told by the SED that is not something that we could do, I would like to see what considerations we have available to us to expedite a turf field rather than another dirt field being brought in for us to tear up later on. You know, I don't, using the word Band-Aid may have not been the proper, I know it will look great if it's, if that's the route that we had to go with, but I think turf is going to be more beneficial, and I'd like to try to see that happening sooner rather than later, and not years down the road from now, if that's a possibility to imagine.
I'd like to make one further comment as well. I mean, I think I used the phrase false dichotomy before. I think this still is, at least if I'm understanding the regulations and constrictions on how we use the funds, still is, I think, a false choice between what's on the screen now and what we're talking about in the main here, the installation of a turf field. I'm very sympathetic, frankly, to all of the people who've spoken today to the desire for a turf field. I'm a supporter of it. It's been a while, but I've had 4 sons go through the district, all of whom played baseball. My 3 older sons played probably a total of 16, 17 years on those fields here. I'm very familiar with what the fields look like. Felt back then that the fields needed to be improved. I had meetings with Dave Downs and others in the district about that. It's been a slow process. And one of the things I was really overjoyed about when Anthony came on board was that he addressed this situation directly, you know, even before he was hired, I think. So I was happy to hear that. I'm, in that respect, very sympathetic to everything people have said about the desire to improve the fields. But the desire to do well by our students isn't, I think, a brand new desire. This has been in place for a long time. Mr. Trent spoke about the culture of maintenance. I agree. Perhaps we've turned a page in that respect and can try to maintain the facilities. I know that's a concern. It's an issue with the turf football field, maintaining that properly. That's not, you know, free of maintenance. So I'm happy to see things moving in a different direction. But I want to make it very clear that at least as far as I'm concerned, I'm speaking really for myself here, but I think this is shared by others on the board as well. I am not unsympathetic to the desire for a turf field. I think I'm very much in favor of that. But it would have to be, I think, pursued in a different way than what we're talking about right here. And there are needs, I think, as Dr. Fanuelli has said, in the district that could be conjoined with this. Whether they are conjoined or not, the turf field, it sounds to me, would have to be put up to a public vote. And another thing I remember in our district, and others do I'm sure as well, was back in roughly 2008, you know, when we had a capital project proposed to include a turf field, a turf football field. That referendum was defeated because people in the district didn't widely share the desire to fund it at that level. So while we're hearing from a very committed group of people today, and I certainly appreciate all of that, we have to also recognize that there are others in the district too who would have to be weighing in on this. And I think, to me, that is another reason perhaps why we might want to consider conjoining a turf field with other components of a capital project that would make this more sellable to the community as a whole. So I guess I just want to stress that it seems like there's some antagonism, or perception of antagonism here on the part of some, but I don't think, as far as I'm concerned anyway, there's any lack of sympathy for this. I think I'm strongly in favor of it. It's just a matter of how to do it.
Anyone else?
I would agree with what people said here today. I have an athletic background. I played baseball. Mr. Decker had quite a curveball back in his day. I believe that's what he was known for. He could play hoop also. And we definitely want, I mean, the whole concept of actually making sure that this dirt, not the turf, was in it was because we really felt improvements needed to be done. I felt that about baseball since I've been here. I advocated strongly, and we got 2 scoreboards, which is something that I could not believe we didn't have, you know, how do we not have a scoreboard, especially with the ability to just put them on the building. Like, it just was very cost effective. Having a turf field would be something I would love to have. It's just figuring out the best way of doing it and looking at everything and not just one component. We have the ability to do that and figure this out. You know, I think most of the challenges that we've had here since I've been here, we meet with optimistically and try to figure it out, and I think we've done that. And I feel this is the same. You know, and there's no antagonism. I think what everyone said here today was correct. You know, it would be beautiful to have it. There's benefits to turf. It's just a matter of in my experience, I know things take time, and I know Mr. Decker talked about the football field being turned over in one season. That was because all the behind the scenes work took a little bit of time, and that was just from construction to end. You know, so anyone who deals with SED, everything takes a long time because it has to go through all architects, and it just takes time, and it's unfortunate. I don't like it. You know, this was trying to repair the fields as quickly as possible. Maybe even, like we said, we might like it. You know, I don't know that. I know the look of I've seen minor league. I think Ketchum still has a dirt field. I know Arlington doesn't, but I think Ketchum and they have a dirt field. You know, it's just adding the right thing. So I still kind of where I am. I think it would be prudent to make these improvements and get them done, and then try to figure out a way to turf the field. I think really what we're asking is the amount of money to spend now, would that be wasteful if we do get a turf field in 2 years or 2 seasons, if that's what it takes? I don't think it is. I think it's worth having our children have that better field right now and then pursue this also. Okay, it's not one or the other. I think it's do this, because I know we can do this now, and then pursue and see the best way to get turf in if that's the case. You get to come back up?
May I?
Public hearing's not closed, so.
Great. 30 seconds.
I don't necessarily mind, but I'm going to keep you to the 30 seconds.
Okay. I want to just point out, on behalf of all these dads and people in support in the baseball community, look, what we really, really want is we want a playable field for our kids to be on. If that means that you do this project, this funding right now for this season, but please understand the seriousness of how important it is for these kids to have an improved facility. And I think that the program deserves it.
That's why it's on there.
Yeah. All right. So I just don't want to get anybody wrong. You know, if that's the solution for right now, you know, I believe we want our kids to be on a playable field, right? But please understand the seriousness and the importance of really considering down the road here to get on moving on SCD and all this other stuff, so that in the future we can have it. All right. Thank you, everybody. Happy New Year.
I think you went a little over, but.
You always go over.
I agree. I would like to make still a more informed decision. I would like to hear from the SED. I would like to see what these quotes are and the estimated time frame before making a decision on this. If it turns that we aren't able to do it, I would like to explore the other options of what we can do to make this happen sooner rather than later. I would not be opposed to, I certainly wouldn't want us to continue with the field that we have and the time that we'll have to wait for a turf field to come in and not do any kind of repairs between now and then. But I would still like to have a more informed decision with the proper quotes and time frame and SCD. If this is something that can be done through the Repair Reserve Fund, I agree with you, Richard. I do think that we would need to have another public session so that if there are any, we have people here in support of it. If there is a opposition to it, it gives the public that opportunity as required with the Repair Reserve Fund for them to come in and voice their opposition to it or their disapproval of it. So if it is something we could do, we can obviously schedule another public hearing for that consideration. I would propose that we, I know somebody said they didn't like the word table, but I would propose that we table this until the following meeting in hopes that we have that SED information and those quotes, so we can make a more informed decision, as well as the other requested information as far as the work, annual work, the past work that's been done, if that's possible to get. So that would be my proposal.
When's our next meeting? Is 2 weeks?
I believe
Does
what's,
that-
what's on the table, though, is whether the board accepts it or not is on the table for tonight.
And I'm proposing to table.
And then we would have to have another meeting, which is fine, and explain all that stuff. And then we'd have to have another hearing, which would have to be the meeting after that, have on it. And all that is fine.
Yeah.
And we'll do all that. I just want to be clear, right? Because Anthony's already saying this. The longer we take with determining this, and it's okay, this is not, I'm just trying to be clear, this is not anything bad. The odds of getting the clay for the field this year diminish. So Anthony, do you want to talk to that, so everyone just has clarity? Because I do not want another meeting where, and then people find out that the repairs aren't going to be done this year in any manner.
Yeah, I think it's difficult, and it's really weather dependent. It depends on what kind of winter we have, right? I mean, it's typical to even see if we can get the kids on the field playing at that point, So that being said, we don't know what we're going to have. We don't know how soft the ground is going to be. We don't know if we'll be able to actually do the appropriate work to it, given the time of year and getting it done before they would need to use the field. It's my opinion that it's unlikely at this point to even do these repairs because of where we sit in time, for it to be ready in the spring.
So you're saying it's not possible to have this ready in
At this point, I don't believe so.
Anthony, I want you to clarify that, because we talked differently. After tonight,
Yeah.
we thought it wouldn't be able to happen, but if we were able to get going, you thought that we had a good chance of repairs to the field if it was to pass.
If it was to pass tonight, we may have a chance, but again, it's weather dependent at this point. Yeah.
Just want clarity.
Yes, sir.
That's all, just seeking clarity.
Yep.
After tonight, it greatly diminishes, is what you're saying.
Agreed, yes.
And are we talking in that respect about just the baseball, softball field component of this, or all parts of it?
Specifically baseball, softball, but
Tennis courts would obviously have to wait for better weather, too.
Yeah, that would have to wait.
That's not really what we're talking about.
right. The time restraints on fencing and concrete work and that sort of stuff, right? There's not quite the restraints
More
we have.
straightforward.
Yeah.
What specifically in the next 2 weeks would you be doing to make it so it could happen, in the spring versus not?
So that's good information. Okay, so then there's between
Now in the next 2 weeks,
now,
there's,
with the next, if it changes, then the vote wouldn't be in 2 weeks, it would be in 4 weeks. Just-
I would just,
We need to worry
like,
about 30.
I would seek some clarification on what sort of sequence we're talking about here. Are we talking about a sequence where we get more information about the cost that you've referred to, Jeff, and then review this exact same proposal? Or are we talking about,
If we keep the proposal as is, you would not have to have another hearing, you would just vouch it, and you could just vote next
I see.
meeting with that information. If you were to deviate,
from what's there?
so let's say remove the fields from it and just do the rest, or if we learn that you could use this fund and the board decides they want to use it for turfing, and then you put that in there, that would be another hearing.
That would require
because
another hearing.
would Change in what's on.
Yeah.
But I
That's
do
exact-
believe we should have the answer to whether, which I believe we have the answer, but we want clarity on whether we could use this fund. So maybe it makes sense to get that answer. I don't know if in 2 weeks you're gonna get other answers to timelines and all that stuff, we would hope. But I would imagine we would have the answer to a direct answer to a direct question on, can you use the repair fund for turfing? And then you'll have that knowledge at the next meeting. So let's say it is no, you would then have the knowledge, do we want to do this or not? If it's yes, then we can talk about, do we want to put up have another hearing that includes those costs?
And at that point, it would probably not be happening in this season anyways, it'd be a project over
A
the summer.
turf field would not.
Correct.
We would hope that.
So we'd still be okay at this point.
I think so, just talking based on your question to him, right? So the dirt getting between tonight and 2 weeks from now will still be the same timeline. It's if we have to go even deeper. Is that even fair to ask you these questions? Like, do you even?
I have to check a little bit more with the contractor to see what they think is completely able to be done. It's more than a matter of just clay here. We're talking about top coating and seeding as well. I would really have to review with the contractor to see what they think could be done at this point.
I think for me to be able to make a decision on this, I need information on forthcoming costs as well. So it's really important for me to be able to understand how much effort in terms of materials and labor time that we could be using on other parts of the school district anywhere, in order to maintain a dirt field the way it should be maintained. And then we can at least project that forward to understand the life expectancy of turf versus all this. What's the cost now being higher? What's the cost overall in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years? Those are the things I need to be able to make a decision that is an informed decision. I tend to agree with what everybody's saying here. I mean, I think turf would be the best option long-term for us. So I think, it's a matter of just being able to walk and chew gum. We need to be able to try to get these things done as quickly as possible if that's the case. But I'd like to know what those options are so that I can make a real decision, because I can't right now.
Understood.
So that, I believe you actually have a motion to lay on the table.
Yes.
Is that correct? Is that accurate? Okay,
Yep.
so that would be a motion to lay item 4.03 on the table, which would put it to the January 21 meeting for continued discussion. Does anybody want to second that motion to table, lay on table? We still have to do that regardless? Okay.
Sorry, point of order.
No, that's fine. Point of order. All right, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing on the repair reserve expenditures.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, passes 5-0. And then we have a motion to lay item 4.03 on the table, pushing it to the January 21 meeting for continued discussion. Do I have a second on that?
It's probably 5.01. It's 5.01.
You're right, I'm sorry, 5.01, thank you for that. Repair Reserve Fund Resolution is item 5.01. So that's what's proposed to lay on the table to January 21. All in favor?
Is there discussion? Is there opportunity for discussion of that? Up to date, the motion's been.
Hold on a second. Go to my cheat sheet because we're in interesting territory here.
There's always, regarding a motion, my understanding is there's always opportunity for discussion.
The motion to lay on the table needs a second, is not debatable, is not amendable, and requires a majority vote.
So no discussion.
That's how I read that. Debatable, I think is the, is that?
I'm not even sure if I'm allowed to say anything further if there's no If there's
I
opportunity
think-
for discussion or debate.
I think you're correct. So
Okay.
what I'll do is I'll ask for a roll call vote then, just to make it very clear. We'll start with Joanne. A vote on
Okay.
tabling
For the 21st.
5.01.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Richard?
I abstain.
Abstain.
I just don't have the information that I would have sought.
Okay. Sasha?
I'm not sure. What's the question?
It's a motion to lay item 5.01 on the table, which pushes it to the January 21 meeting.
Yeah, that's fine, yeah.
Yes? Okay. Jeff?
I agree. I wish I had gotten the information that was requested so I can make a more informed decision, but I also am a yes for that.
Okay, and I will vote yes as well, so that's 4, 0, 1 abstention. Okay. All right, that'll bring us to item 6.01. We have a presentation from Dr. Fanuelli and Mr. Lynch.
Mr. Lynch, where are you gonna feel comfortable? Want to go there?
Wherever you want me. Yeah.
You want to go there? I'll stay here.
Sure.
Thank you. Who's leaving? Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd love to hear you speak.
Yeah, what's going on?
I won't take it personally.
Take that for you.
Might have died.
That.
Yeah, I got to replace the battery.
Okay, yeah, it's all good. Dr. Fanuelli, would you like to kick it off, or do you want me to get going?
You can start.
All right. Good evening, everyone. So, Dr. Fanuelli and I are going to speak about a trip that we took. We applied last spring to be a part of an international delegation to the Iberian Peninsula in Portugal and Spain. And the purpose of that trip, it's a yearly trip, is to connect with our educational counterparts and to really learn from their educational systems and the differences, and to bring things back to the district. So a couple of the other places they've gone in years past, last year they went to Japan, the previous year was Finland, and then Germany before that. A really interesting trip, which we'll get into, but one of the things that I thought was unique was that in their selection process, I think they emphasize diversity of geography. So there was representation from Oregon, California, Illinois, Pennsylvania, New York, Virginia, Georgia, and North Carolina, which made it unique not just to see the schools that we went into, which we'll talk about, but I learned a lot about our own country's educational system through the process, just learning from them. So that was
Like a
good.
combined, the learning was combined because we learned from our U.S. counterparts, if you will, and then obviously being together, in Spain and Portugal.
All right, so the trip began in Spain, in Madrid. We went to the school there, then went down to Sevilla and to Lisbon, and we saw 2 more schools there. Sandra, if you can just go to the next slide. So each time they go on a trip, they are selective of where they go, and they try to get a mixture of public schools. They don't use the word charter school there, but they have publicly subsidized schools, which we did see. And we also saw, and this was the first of this type that I've ever seen, an American school in Lisbon.
So really 3 types of schools we saw. We saw what I would consider a public-private hybrid. We saw an international school, which where like delegates send their kids, and we saw a full public school. And you could see differences, just like you would see here in items like that. So,
Yes, so the first, Sandra, if you can just go back to that last one. So the first school that we went to was in Madrid. That's an aerial photo, was in the inner city. This was that publicly subsidized school. I believe they said it was 30% subsidized and privately run. There was a heavy religious component to this particular school. Across the country, the Catholic religion in particular is a very strong religion there within the school system.
we'll talk about that impact at the end.
Yep. A couple of the takeaways from this school is, so it was a K-12 school, and it began at the age of 3, which is unique, not something that I'm familiar with in Dutchess County or in the States here, so that was pretty cool to see. So there is an English component to this school where the core subjects are taught in Spanish, but the specials are taught in English. And every class has a language assistant within that class in addition to the teacher. And that's part of their dual language certification process. We also learned about the Spanish education system generally, and it was interesting to hear that students can graduate by the age of 15, and they kind of they get on a track at that age, and some of them choose to go to a trade school, some of them choose to go to a university, and some of them go into the workforce. So it was interesting to learn about that. We were all, speaking from all of the participants on the trip, really interested in, it's going to sound crazy that we were interested in this, but they had a 2-hour lunch every day. And the meal came out in 3 different courses. And you can tell that that was really a cultural thing that they prioritized and believed in. We were pretty mesmerized by it. It was also very noticeable, and I think, part of this is, the geography in Europe, but there were student presentations, and the students, so there's a program that they call Erasmus Plus. It's an exchange program, and many of them so they apply through their own government, and they go to different countries, Europe, Asia, North America. Last year, 40 high schoolers went on that trip, and we thought that was pretty special as well. This school, as I guess you can't see in that particular picture, but they also had school uniforms. All right, so the next school we went to was in Lisbon. This is that international school that I spoke about. There were 59 different nationalities represented within this school. It was noticeable that when we pulled into this school, it was a very different experience in terms of security. In the other schools, there really wasn't security, and in this one, before we could even pull into the lot, they were checking for bombs underneath the bus. Yeah, it was kind of a surreal experience.
There was a gate that was closed that had to open up for us.
And they talked about, unfortunately, soft targets, kids of ambassadors, etc.
We'll talk later, stark difference in the other 2 schools, which kind of had the opposite approach to security, but we'll talk about that at the end of our conclusion.
Yeah, and so this is a school that in many ways tries to be American by design. And the director of the school system, I guess that would be similar to a superintendent here. He was not a principal. He was in charge of the entire multiple schools there. He talked about how American education system is known for creating problem solvers and really prioritizing creativity. So they in many ways try to mimic the American system. We thought it was pretty neat where the student body went after they graduated from this school, and I wrote down some notes. So out of the 68 seniors last year, 11 went on to American universities, 9 to Dutch universities, 12 to British universities, 9 to Portuguese universities, 16 to different other countries, and then 11, and this is a, I think, uniquely European thing, 11 took a gap year. All right. So this was an inner city school, public school in Lisbon. When I look at that picture over to the left, and I've told this story and I'm still wrapping my head around it, but we arrived, and it took a couple minutes for the principal to come out, who was giving us the tour. And this is in the inner city, the heart of Lisbon, and there was a group of kids outside, not that group on the bikes, but they were clearly upper elementary, and one was trying to climb a tree, the other one's throwing baseballs against the side of the school, they're playing tag.
They had some unique game that they played on the railing.
Yeah.
That had some sort of objective, but it wasn't clear to any of us, but they clearly had this railing game. And we just watched them. All right, they probably have some free time, you know, kids are kids. This is the complete public school. Sorry, this is just, and then we were in the school for a while, long time. And then when we were coming out to leave, and the same exact kids are doing the same exact stuff. And we just kind of looked at each other, and we asked the principal, who was the woman there, like, what's going on? And she said, I quote, "I think their teacher isn't here today." She didn't know for sure. We didn't challenge her on it, we just went with it. But it was such a unique thing to see that they basically were afraid. And there was no, and they stayed within the you know, they played their railing game or whatever. It blew our minds. Talk about it, Eric.
Yeah, I think for better or worse, we were blown away, because whether it's, you know, upper elementary kids, whether it's Hagen or a school in Georgia or Oregon, that doesn't happen. It doesn't happen anywhere, and you could say maybe they're better for having a little more freedom and feeling that those kids were safe. Or you could say, well, they were safe, but they weren't learning math and reading that day, because when we left after the presentation, those same students were there. So just fascinating, a different culture and a different part of the world. This was also a very diverse school. 66 different nationalities were represented. It was a first grade through 9th grade school. I see Mrs. Spiegel here. She would appreciate this, given the kindergarten bike program.
We talked about Miss Spiegel
did.
in Lisbon, so you need to know that.
Yeah, so this is so many of the students walk and still ride bikes to school. And so they not only teach kindergartners to ride bikes, but they actually have a bike class that goes through 4th grade, and there's a road safety component that kind of goes with that. English is taught to all students beginning in 1st grade, and all students also get 3 years of French. Pre-K, so again, this is a different country than the other, the school we began with, but pre-K also begins at 3 years old, which is, you know, obviously different than here where it's 4. This particular school was busting at the seams, and you could feel it when the bell rang and students were in the hallway. They had said in the last 5 years their enrollment has increased 100%, and they talked about the impact that has had on the school. A couple other things that I wrote down that I thought were unique.
If you look at that one picture that I was doing, the kids aren't sleeping. They were told to put their heads down so that they wouldn't be photographed. So if you look at everyone, just an interesting tidbit I wanted to throw in there. They weren't having a sleep time while we were there.
There was a leadership class that the students took. It was called Bantu, and that was based on Nelson Mandela's leadership teachings. We thought that was a special part of this school. No mobile phones in the school at all, with the exception of ninth graders. A deep belief that this is also unique. I don't believe this is an American belief, but a deep belief in high-stakes testing universally. And, you know, this is something that is debated in all different types of circles. But when some of the people ask questions about that, because we don't hear that in this country very often, and they actually talked about high-stakes testing being the most inclusive way to get children opportunities. And it was just fascinating to hear, and that also goes along with the college admission process. So when you're 15 years old, you take this high-stakes test, and you don't write an essay, and you don't get recommendations. All of those other pieces that we do in this country to try to figure out a big picture of a child, they base it 100% off of this test. And it's just fascinating because it's the opposite of
It
what
didn't sit
we...
well with us. It's kind of been, some of the system does fit well, where they really had an academic angle in it, and then you could, kind of a career path too. But you were really kind of pigeonholed into one of them at an early age. And then the test you took really decided what type of degree you could pursue. So if you wanted to be in the medical field, you didn't take a medical test. You took the same test, but you just had to score higher on it. And what really, to be honest, we're going to talk about this later, but we might as well talk about it now. There was no story about the child. So everyone has someone, or you have someone in college or going to college, someone won't, but one of the most important items you do is the college essay, is the letter of recommendation, is kind of the telling of the story. There's no telling of the story. It's just, what did you do on that test? We struggled with that. And I think there was some struggle with that there, but that was a system they have. But I would imagine they'd be looking at that. But continue on.
Can I just ask one quick question on that? Did they allow the people to retake the test if they had a bad test day, or how does that work?
I don't know the answer to that
I don't
question.
know that. I would imagine you could take it again, but I don't know that. It really was high stakes, so maybe you could. We'll have to Google that. Just what you got on that, just determine. Like, it just didn't add up to us, but.
And to determine placement for like the successive year, or?
Yeah, for where you go with it and what you could pursue.
Right.
And if you want to, be a doctor, you have to score higher on it than if you want to be someone in a different field.
What age was it given?
15.
15.
So it was at the point that you could,
That's where you divide
Yeah.
off into kind of the career or the academic. Just seems like.
And this cultural belief, this was Portugal and Spain. There were some differences between the two countries philosophically. This was the same, and not just what they showed in their slides, but they spoke very proudly of that philosophy. All right. So in thinking about all three of those schools, I think and we've touched on these things, but I think in terms of trends that we noticed, number one, technology. I think they're going through a similar time period to what we are here, and we've spoken about the anxious generation. That is clearly, there's a lot of questioning about us over pushing technology. And I'm not just talking about schools, societally. And so there is definitely a push towards less technology in schools, inclusive of mobile phones, but also really being thoughtful about what we use technology for. A ton of diversity we saw in all of these schools. That was wonderful to see. There was a real focus on health and wellness of the child. And, you know, we talked about a 2-hour, I'm not proposing that we have 2-hour lunches at
That was all the
Nassau
schools.
or Hagen, but that's part of their belief that, hey, we need to slow down when we eat. We need more time, more unstructured time. And, you know, that was just one part of that. So health and wellness was a big focus. Infant education, again, I mentioned it, but the age of 3, for that to be kind of the norm in those two countries.
Yeah, pre-K was the norm, and even obviously younger than us here. We talked about the longer lunches, the more free play, the less supervision. That whole story we told you about the one school where they were playing on the railing. The earlier tracks, placement tests, we kind of hit that. They all teach English, so English was, everyone has to learn. It's not you can choose another language or whatever. You're learning English, and at a young age. The school security was interesting. You can talk about volunteerism in a second, but that one school we talked about with the mirrors, but the other two is the opposite. You know, you kind of, oh, you're here to visit, come on in. You know, I know we were with the delegation, and it was probably all planned before, so there might be a little of that, but you kind of, you know, it didn't feel like it might feel here in those other schools.
In education, you said that was pre-K?
It was, in essence, pre-K, because it was grade 3. That's what they start, so 3, 4, and then they go on to, there's a focus on that younger education there.
That's not at the public school level? They're 3 years old teaching? They're going to school publicly?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Want to do volunteerism?
Yeah, there's just one other thing I want to add, the less supervision part, Dr. Fanuelli talked about, it was noticeable, and we took some pictures. You know, one of the things, if we're hiring a monitor here in Spackenkill, you know, one of the questions we ask is, you know, please define please define active supervision. And what we're looking for is, you know, we see what's going on the playground, at lunch, and you can tell they make a point to stay away and let kids figure out more than I think maybe what we've been trained to do here, for good reason, for safety. But it was very noticeable, and there's one photo that I have from the building where there's just these 2 big fields, and I couldn't find an adult on those fields, and there, you know, it was 200-yard ish fields running parallel to each other. I couldn't find an adult. And you know, I think that's something that they do on purpose, which is just noticeable and notable. So volunteerism, I do think this is similar to us here. When I hear Mr. Malkus here come and present, and you know, frequently we have Spackenkill high school students come to Nassau, but they call it voluntoldism there, and they talk about how it's a requirement within their school system to volunteer for X amount of hours, but it really gets ingrained in the student population, gets them interested and a sense of purpose in their community, and we actually had students speak about that, which was nice.
In the Hagen curriculum, what we really saw was values. You know, P2, like that kind of, it was just kind of embedded everywhere. You could definitely feel the flavor of almost what we're doing with P2. We were definitely happy to see that. The first one, we really wondered, like, some of the things they did there really were based on cultural beliefs, and we don't know. You know, impact of religion in that first school, like that's just something that we wouldn't see here in America, you know. So there were some things that we were like, all right, they have, that might be unique and wouldn't translate, you know, versus same stuff here. You had another example. What else? What's the other cultural one you're talking about? Ever? No?
So, but that first school was you should call it a hybrid, right? A hybrid
was a-
public-private?
It was a public school that
Mhm.
received
Yeah.
some private funding, so that gave them the
Liberty.
freedom to kind
Yeah.
of
So,
pursue what they wanted.
Would then parents send their children to that school by choice? Or was it a public school kind of setup where they would have gone there if they were in that region?
I think it was based on where they lived, but
Yeah.
Lottery.
it wasn't kind of a New York City flavor. It just was.
So public in that respect. Like, the school,
Yes.
people going there were basically selected by living there.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's what I believe.
Unlike a private school here where you could be sent,
Be
or
bused
go
in or something.
from anywhere.
But there definitely was. It was some holiday or something, and you could see the religious connotation of that. Love, we love the term multiple pathways here, and we wondered, do they really have that there when we're talking about the high stake testing? But they did have pathways, that you could go into kind of the career, versus academic kind of manner. But this is what we wondered, how much multiple pathways are there? The concept of technology. This was really one of the. It's on the next slide, so we should probably save it. What we discovered. We'll save what's happening as part of our next steps. But go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, and then, so free play, and again, we're doing so much work with this and exploring with parents and teachers. All three schools had some type of rule where, so one school, for example, after every hour of instruction, it was an expectation school-wide that there was a half hour of outside play or free play. And so that, that's not something besides lunch and recess, mostly in the States, certainly here at Spackenkill, we don't mandate our teachers to do things like that. Many of them do that on different days, and they have the autonomy to do that. But you could tell this was a real focus there, and mattered enough to them that they actually mandated it. And so I don't know that will happen here, but it was just really interesting that was the case at all three of those schools. Yeah.
Health and wellness, we talked about. On gym days in one of the schools, every kid wore their gym outfit the whole day. And then the other kids wore a school uniform. But when we first walked in, I'm like, oh, their uniforms are very, I don't know, what would be the word, not uniformy. It was like a track pants or track, discovered that was their gym uniform. They have a profile of a graduate or a learner, which is what New York is looking to instill with the Blue Ribbon Commission. So we saw a lot of similarities with that. Next slide. Really our next steps, the connections we made with the AASA, which is the National Superintendent Association, was really got to know some good people across the country. We're trying to get together again to talk about our experiences, kind of have a reunion. To have colleagues nationally and internationally. And really the coolest thing that we saw is in one of the schools, we're walking out and Eric's like, hey, look at that book. It's The Anxious Generation. And it's kind of centered on the bookshelf. And it turns out that they're doing a book talk on it. And that they're having the exact same conversations we are having about it. And if you read that book, or if you read it talks about how it's not an American thing, it's throughout the, the globe, and they are literally wrestling with the exact same thing, reading the exact same book. So the cool thing is, Nate Chapman, who was the leader, was titled director there, we've been in contact with him about how his book talk's going, how our book talk going, and we're gonna see if we could kind of put something together. There's kind of this international discussion on what they are thinking and hearing and what we are thinking and hearing, so this was fascinating to see.
Which school was that? Which school was that?
That was the international school.
International school. And that age range is all the way up through high
Yes,
school
that
level.
was,
High school
everyone
level.
there.
And so in particular, when I've met with Nate and his team through Google Meets, what the particular part we're interested in partnering on. So right now, by design, we are only focusing on what can we do in schools to make the experience better for kids in school. Now, the book talks about this concept of collective action, and there's a part from the parents as well. And so what we are working through our PTA, which we present to at PTA meetings, is Nate and I are very interested in actually connecting our parent group with their parent group. So we're gonna have these ideas for implementation and some shifts for next year in the school, but we want to partner with obviously our parents and their parents to generate ideas for the community and parents, and that's exciting.
Questions?
What was the length of the school day if they had a 2-hour lunch and free play?
So the 2-hour lunch was only that first school. And it was different in all three of them, but they teach the traditional subjects. I would say generalizing, certainly for less time than we teach it here. But that's the approach that they take, because their school day, with the exception of one school, was a similar time, 8 to 3 o'clock. That first school, I believe, went to 5 o'clock. And maybe that's how they, account for that extra
Longer
time.
lunch.
Yeah, but the other schools, they ended around 3 o'clock, so.
The tradition of eating there too, though, dinner is traditionally eaten around 9 p.m. So kind of like dinner for you guys tonight. But not tradition. Like that was like it. You don't. That's what you do. Like it was everyone. It wasn't just because a working family or someone had a meeting. That was fascinating. And they kind of eat more. More, it looks more like grazing versus having big meals, except for maybe that dinner. It's interesting stuff.
I think what it taught us, in summary, when you look at this international test, the PISA test, and you have, Finland always gets the headlines because they're the top performing school, and South Korea was on that list for a while. It was just interesting to see a different country do school very different than us, and not necessarily, I think we always think as a culture, and part of this is through all of Race to the Top, Common Core, APPR, all of these things. A lot of time, if you talk to a kindergarten teacher about what it was 15 years ago, they would say, hey, now we're teaching the first grade curriculum, and it never used to be that way. We have kind of grown up in this education system that more is better, and that what we saw, I would say generally, they don't believe that.
And what about other stuff, like, is it 9 months out of the year? Is it, do they have summer breaks, all that kind of stuff, similar?
Yeah.
Huh.
I don't have that fancy of a
Happy New Year, everybody. Just gonna kind of give, last time we were here in November, so kind of a December synopsis of what went down at Hagan and kind of things to look forward to in January. So one of the things that really gets highlighted in December, and necessarily so, is our music program. We have 3 winter concerts. It used to be 2, but with the burgeoning of participation, we just didn't have enough room in the auditorium or in the parking lot to house everybody. So we did 3 nights, which was really awesome for families. I know if you had kids in 3rd, 4th, and 5th, that means multiple nights. But you know, they shortened the concerts and was much more manageable backstage too with the amount of kids that we had. But it's probably one of the most perfect scenes of all 3 contributors coming together, right? The students obviously are the early musicians, the teachers and their work, but a lot of Hagan musicians, it's a lot of the parent encouragement and practicing and getting them to ensembles early in the morning. And the concerts are the culmination of all that coming together. And they do such a wonderful job. Our teaching staff is truly dedicated. Our students put in the time and effort and energy. And you know, Mr. Andreas brings the 5th grade chorus to the Galleria, and they sing holiday tunes for passerbys, and a lot of Spack and Kill people go and support their kids there. So it's really an awesome time period. And the greatest thing about it is the growth arc is so steep. You know, we have beginner strings plucking away at hot cross buns at the first concert, and then our 5th graders are playing longer and more complicated pieces. So it's very fast tracked. Connected to that, in kind of the spirit of performances, Queen City Dance, which is a local dance company owned by a Spack family, had reached out to me and Mr. Lynch about presenting a portion of their Nutcracker presentation to our students. Being about 10 Spack and Kill students who are older are in the performance. We thought it was a phenomenal idea. They do a show at the Civic Center, but not all families are able to go. So it's a great way to expose kids to that kind of culture and dance. And it was renowned how good our students were in the audience. They were in tuned the whole time, even though there's no dialogue. It's no flashy lights. We were in the gym. And it's ballet, but they were intrigued. My nephew's in 4th grade. I asked him during the holidays what he thought. He loved it. So it was really a nice way to kind of interconnect the community, and the Spack kids got highlighted in that presentation. We also had our second P2 assembly. Avid students from both the high school and Todd came down, highlighted kids in Hagan and Nassau that were caught using good character. But I think the piece that was most fun for me is we played Gratitude Hot Potato. And I asked kids what the underlying lesson was in Gratitude Hot Potato. So the rules of the game is each class passed around a kind of a dodgeball with the avid students. And every time the music stopped, they had to share something they were grateful for. And of course, the underlying lesson there is even when you are out or you lose, you still have things to be grateful for. We upped the challenge for 4th and 5th graders. They weren't allowed to share anything their classmates shared. So if you were last out, you had the most difficult task because people took family and school and teacher. But the answers that they gave was pretty renowned. I'm grateful for my brain. Allows me to think. So it really was a cool program, kind of culminating the year and going into the holiday break. And then we come back and it's spelling bee time. So our Class Bs are going on as we speak. They'll be wrapped up by the end of next Friday, and then we have our school-wide spelling bee on the 24th, where our champion gets to go on to the regional against other schools in New York State. So look forward to that, and certainly we'll bring that presentation forward too. All right.
Great. Okay, that was part of 6.02.
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay. Eric, do you have anything to continue to add to on your side?
Sure. I don't want to keep everybody.
It's fine. I think he's good. Okay. Okay, with that, I'll go to move on to item 7.01, board correspondence. We did get a few emails from a parent, general holiday wishes towards some of our teachers, which was very nice. We also received some correspondence by mail from what was called Spack&Kills Community of Seniors. And it basically had to do with taxable rates and things like that for senior citizens and stuff like that. So I was gonna ask that maybe Val at some point give us a response to that letter. It doesn't have to be right now, but if you would do that, and then maybe we could just at least, I can read your response, or have you say something at the next meeting to address that letter.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. 7.02, comments from the public on non-agenda items. Any public comment on non-agenda items? 7.03, comments from the board. Anyone?
I've got a couple of comments. Quickly, one is just to note again what you just mentioned, Dan, regarding the really, I thought, extraordinary gesture of appreciation on the part of Vicki Phillip to a range of teachers at Todd who I thought really shined through her eyes, and really appreciate as well, Lori, your response to Vicki Phillip's letter expressing gratitude for that show of appreciation. I can't remember a gesture like that. As extended and thoughtful and extensive, and really a credit, as you noted in your reply to our teachers here throughout the district, but she was singling out teachers at Todd in particular. So I really enjoyed seeing that. Appreciated your response. Then the other thing I just would note is that there was a monthly meeting of the Dutchess County School Board Association on the 2nd. Unfortunately, I missed it. I was en route back from upstate and ran into some snow, so I wasn't able to get back in time for it. But the agenda was interesting, and I could perhaps share a little bit if I hear by way of the minutes at the next meeting. There was a presentation at that meeting on regional collective bargaining from an attorney who works with districts, some school districts. So I'll seek to get a little more information about that and maybe share it at the next opportunity.
Anyone else? I was going to ask you, Richard, about there were some member concerns that were listed in the minutes from that meeting. So maybe I'll just end up watching it and seeing if I can catch up on it myself.
Right.
I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
unfortunately I missed that.
Yep.
First.
Okay, with that, I'm going to move on to 7.04, comments from our superintendent.
First meeting back from the holidays, and then our extended time off, so hope everyone out there had a good break. Everyone here had a good break. It's good to be back, and kind of back in the routine. It really kind of came from this week. Got an email today, some sad news. Former board member and former board president, Robert Morrison. He served from 1969 to 1979, including towards the end of his career as president. He's passed away. He's a little bit of an institution around here. When I was principal of the high school, and Dr. Horvath mentioned that the referendum went down at the high school that included the turf field, the district sought out a citizens committee to help get a closer feel to what the citizens were looking for. And Robert Morrison volunteered to be on that committee. I think he was only one of like 12. It wasn't very big. But he was I adored him. He came with a lot of experience and very sound. I was grateful to get to know him. On a sad note, he was on a short list of people we haven't gotten to yet that we wanted to talk to with the 160th anniversary coming up. So we'll still try to pursue some of his relatives. But just sad to learn of his passing. He was 90. And then on a final note, about a month ago, I ran into Corey Embler, who is our newly hired school psychologist at the elementary schools. And she spoke about Charlie Johnson, who was an Arlington graduate, and I was, very knowledgeable about him when I was there. And he was a Korean War hero who passed away in the Korean War. He passed away saving the life of another Arlington graduate, so it was kind of this magical story, and then saving, roughly 10 more people that night. So he was a very special human being, I think, in the eyes of everyone in our area, but especially, over at Arlington, and felt he was deserving of the Medal of Honor for his actions, which he never received. So that was kind of a push that we had, always trying to do that, but never really happened. So I'm talking to Corey. He goes, "Hey, you were heavily involved with that, I said, "Well, how do you know him?" She goes, "I'm his great niece." And we just started talking, and she says, "I think they're finally gonna give him the Medal of Honor." I'm like, "What?" And then we pursued it, and sure enough, on Friday, he received the Medal of Honor, and I was honored to be invited for my previous involvement with it. I was one of like 5 people who went, who weren't family. Just one of the most amazing experiences I've had, and just the appreciation of veterans. Coincidentally, Robert Morrison was a veteran of the Navy, so just the appreciation of everything was amazing, and I'll talk a little bit about it in the newsletter. But just kind of a neat thing for the Hudson Valley to have someone, getting the Medal of Honor. That was all.
Thank you, I appreciate hearing that. Bob is my next door neighbor, so we'll miss him. Very, very nice man. And that was down at the White House, I assume, the Medal of Honor?
Literally in the White House. The president, I was from here to Joanne, the president. Just everything about it was special. And then the next day, the Army did their version of it, and that could have been even better. Like, it just was an amazing experience.
Excellent. Congrats on that experience, and good job pushing for that. That's a great story to hear. Okay, item 8.01. The board will take a vote to go directly into executive session for the purpose of seeking legal advice for contract negotiations. After the executive session, the board does not anticipate any further business being discussed. Do I have a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that's 5-0. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.